where did it start, sir? What was your childhood like getting into film in general?
I well, yeah, I say I grew up in a house, a lot of kids. My mom was a painter, so that was definitely an inspiration to be on the artistic side. My dad was in business, and you know, the usual kind of traditional family kind of thing. And so I think the inspiration to do visual arts came from my mother being a painter, but I also went to as a kid, I did different art classes, painting and sculpting, and all kinds of ways to in a school not too far from here now that I live, and it was great. It was kind of an inspiration, and I had a bunch of friends from doing it too, and we're all kind of artsy and whatever. But we also made movies, and because my dad always had a Super 8 camera, so that always kind of inspired me, because he always shot film, family stuff and all that kind of stuff. And then as a kid, you kind of grab that and you start playing with it. And then he had a Super 8 and a regular 8 camera. So you kind of learn about cameras and how to photograph stuff. And he was kind of a geek, I guess. He had audio recording, like reel to reel. So early on, we are kind of exposed to technology. Maybe that was state of the art back then. So, by the way, so not what you can do with your phone nowadays. But so that kind of inspired me. And then I think one of my older brothers went to art school, and he didn't really study film. He studied art in general. So, but he did some film classes, and that kind of inspired me too to pick up the newer cameras. And I think 3/4 inch was state of the art back then. Woo! Yeah, which is terrible, but whatever. But all these things kind of lead into where a career was going to go. And then when I went to college, it was try to figure out what I wanted to do, and I kind of decided to go to Syracuse because that was kind of film and TV to study that production side. So that sort of led me that way. But it could have been, I could have went to school for engineering or architecture. I was also interested in those things too. So, but I think it just kind of led me that direction since I had experience with it. I think so.
Now, when you were in college, where did you exactly? What were the stepping stones to get to to cinematography? Where did you first
Oh,
start to perfect your craft in a way?
when I went to school, I didn't go to school for cinematography. No, there was not any program that, in the 80s, this is way back when, they didn't really have a cinematography program. Maybe AFI existed back then, and that was for a master's degree. So, but when I went to school at Syracuse, no, it was more about production, how to be a producer, that sort of like how TV works and how film works and how production works, but not specifically trained. Like nowadays, they have very specific cinematography courses and you can train, and that's great. But I kind of learned afterward and I sort of fell into it. I studied directing really. So, which is kind of good because it kind of gives you an overall, you know, point of where you have to see everything that's going on in a production. So it sort of led me into cinematography because that was sort of a way I could create art visually. Because I still paint, to this day, and I need that kind of output. And directing is not an easy road to go down. I'll tell you that much. So, and it seemed to come naturally to me to be a cinematographer. I don't know the exact point where I just made that jump, but I realized I didn't know anything about lighting, so I had to really work on my skill set that way. So I kind of started at like your age or younger than that, being an electrician and then kind of building up my skill set and trying to, in New York, kind of gapping little music videos, little films and things like that. At a certain point in New York, it was a much smaller market. So you're kind of boxed in where you're at. So I decided at that point I kind of needed to increase my skill set. So I moved to California, Hollywood, and meet more people. There's a lot more productions. There's more opportunities. There was a ton more opportunities in Los Angeles. So which is great because I gaffed while I was out there, worked as an electrician, gaffed, and then kind of made the jump to director of photography at that point. So, and it was basically Roger Corman gave me my first break to work on a film as a DP, and you know, I gapped some things for him, and then he kind of let me do some second unit work, and that led to first unit work and a whole mess of other movies and TV shows and the rest of my career. So he really was instrumental in that. So and there were people who they once you're in the business, you kind of get keyholed into one spot, unless you can break out that spot. Maybe from DP you can do some directing, and which I had the opportunity to do, but if you're a gaffer, you're kind of stuck as a gaffer until you jump and stop taking gaffing jobs. So you just realize you have to do that to step up.
How competitive was it when you're switching jobs? Was there any trial and error? A lot there.
Yeah, I mean, uh, what I was doing pretty well as a gaffer in Los Angeles and making really good money, and then you have to kind of stop at some point because you realize the rest of your life you're just going to be gaffing, and I wasn't really satisfied at that point. And I kind of wanted to make the jump, and I was young enough to do it, so I made that decision and stopped taking gaffing jobs and just went right into either beat camera or camera, or cinematographer. So
When you
Mhm.
when you're been as you're doing your cinematography jobs and the lighting, how this isn't on the list, but I have to ask you this, sir.
It's fine. You can hit me up.
What is the how much are you thinking about color grading when you're lighting a set and filming it too?
I, it really, it really starts with the written page first, and then it starts a conversation with the director, whoever's directing, and you're just really interpreting the director's vision of what they see, and then you're also bringing to the table. That's why you're hired, your ideas. So, and if they mesh together, it's great, and there's no issues. So, from the page, really, is where everything starts. So you have to be able to read a script and say, okay, this is going to happen this way, and what's my vision when I see it, when I read it, and if that meshes with the director, it's great. And a lot of times directors are just like they just worry about the acting and the actors, and that's great. And they want you to bring the vision, or there are directors who have the vision and you just have to interpret it. So there's a lot of different ways to how the relationship works. So it's always very complicated. So, but it's good to work with a lot of people that know you. I've worked with like Dave Payne. I've worked with so many times. We just have a shorthand, and you know, it's like you know, we finish each other's sentences. So it's kind of a relationship that's been developed over the years. So. Mhm.
So something that is very minuscule that I do want to ask you is, and if I have to expand here, please tell me. But how
Mhm.
important is the 180 rule when you're on set with two cameras or more?
Uh, it used to be really important, but now I watch shows all the time where people break the rule all the time, and I don't know if that's through ignorance or just as a style. I see it broken out all the time. It's kind of funny because you're like, oh, they just jumped the line right there, So, I mean, yeah, yeah. Pardon my French, but it, it was always used. That rule is, if it's okay to know all the rules. You have to know all the rules, and then when you break the rules, there has to be a reason why you break the rules. For dramatic effect, or if that at that point, someone's personality changes 180 degrees, and that maybe is the visual cue that changes that. So for me, I still like the old rules and keeping with the old rules, but I see it broken down, and I think people are more forgiving, maybe.
We were doing a short film a couple weeks ago, and
Hmm.
that was brought up to me, and
Yeah.
it was like a 20-minute conversation too on that night, and that's a lot of time
Hmm.
on set to go by, but um, it made me definitely think because I had other people on, we had other people with cameras that night,
Uh,
and it was a big discussion. So when I was going to sit down with you, I said I have to ask Mike about
Oh,
that
okay.
because
Well, I I have a great story about that actually. So let me think about it. There was a movie I did called Scottish Tale, and
okay,
there was a very long scene of 12 people talking at a table. Okay, so there are multiple 180-degree angles because you could turn here and then talk to that person and then turn here and you just changed everything, right? And you have to know that when you cut to the next person over there, they better be looking the right direction, right? So the good part is I'm really good at pre-visualizing things in my head. So I kind of know it's like on this line, he's going to be looking to so and so, this person. And then when they answer, that person's going to return their look to that way. So I'm really good about drawing everything out. So I have it in my head. So when I get to set, it's very much like, okay, when you say this line, you're here. And then when you say this line, you're looking this way, right? So you have to know how to switch the 180 line all the time. So you have to have a pivot point like that. So we had the scene and it was I don't know, 10 pages long. It was a really long scene. It was dinner tables, Thanksgiving dinner, and they're talking back and forth. And one of the actors, he's probably in his late 70s at that point, had worked on this big movie with some very famous big DP, and they actually had to stop production because they couldn't figure it out where the line was. So, and in my head, I figured out, I basically took the table and I drew an overplot and I put a 45-degree down the middle and then put everyone on this side this way who would talk. And so I basically had to pre-design everything. And then when the script supervisor's like, wait, you have to, you're like, no, I got it. It's fine. I knew every single line. And you go over with scripty and you're like, okay, on this line, they have to be looking this way. And then when they answer, they have to be looking this way or turning on camera and getting all that too. And it's also good to have some extra stuff where people just turn or look that way so you can switch it on the edit.
how important is it, and how is the workspace when you have different units on cinematography as well?
When you're the first unit, I did a show, Black Scorpion. We had two separate units. So we had an action unit. So basically, like second unit would come in. We had a fight unit, and then we had like a night unit. So there was a whole other unit that just did all like nighttime driving things and things like that. And then we had a unit where I was first unit. I would come in and do all the dialogue with the actors and stuff like that. And then the second unit would, clean up whatever action we missed, with the stunt people falling or, where it takes time to set up and everything. And it's really not first unit people, it's all the stunt people doing all the back end stuff. So that the good part is usually you work with, we did that on Super Ninjas too. So where it's like, okay, I put my a camera operator into being the second unit. So he already knew most of the action that already happened. And it's a lot easier to translate. It's already been lit. The sets are like there, everything's kind of there and in place. So you can kind of go with the best boys can take over, become gaffers, and then you move on to the next unit like that. So it's just a way to really coordinate. But it's good to have kind of a Bible or a visual language that everyone kind of knows. Because once you're working with like crew that a long time, you have shorthand all the time, and they know how you're lighting and what's going to be wrong or right, and, how to key properly, and I get very particular about that. So I key and fill from the same side, so my gaffers know that. It's like, okay, so not everybody does that.
I
So
like how you said you draw things out because like that always helped me as well, like within life, like
mhm.
because you have
Yeah.
everything digital. So I feel like if you have one of the head people involved in a film production, if they're drawing things out, I feel like it makes everything easier, not only
Oh
for
yeah.
you, but for everybody else. Correct?
Oh, it's fantastic having boards, and nowadays it's a lot easier. You can kind of interpret those things. Well, I did a thing with Ryan Murphy, and basically I was a show called New Normal, and they had a scene with Nene Parks, and she was playing herself, her mother, her father, and her and then she had another character in the scene who plays her brother. And the first unit just there it was so complicated to shoot a scene with 4 people and 3 of them were played by the same person to because you had over the shoulders and all these other things. So we had great doubles. It's nice to have a budget, right? But first unit just ran out of time, and a DP friend of mine, Carlos, just said, "Here, you take this. He knows I'm really good at like really technical stuff." So I sat down and basically broke it down. I think I could do it in. I think the director sent me a list of like 48 shots they want to do. I'm like, that's insane, but that's a lot of shots to get. But I said I could do this in like 20 some shots. I made a list. I gave it to the AD. I said, this is what we have to do. I said, this is the sequence of order that we have to shoot it in, just because lighting wise. And the first question I asked was, I talked to the makeup artist because they're going to do, different facial things and hair and makeup and stuff like that. And I said, what is the longest time for which character does it take? Because I'm going to put whatever character who takes the longest makeup, that's going to be the first thing on the call sheet, wherever you're shooting. So you know that they have time to get them made up perfectly. And the answer, which surprised the hell out of me, was Nene Parks as herself. And I was like, oh, not as her mother, or because they're doing aging makeup and stuff. Like, they're like, no, we can do that actually fairly quickly. So I was like, okay, wow, okay. It's really great to have a team like that. That was so professional. But the lead makeup artist just said, yes, no, it takes the most time to get her to look like her. I was like, great. So we did everything Nene Parks as herself. And then we had doubles of her mom and her dad for the side shoulder shots and over things like that. And we had the brother who's a actor there all the time, so we could stick him in or whatever. So I designed it so we would shoot her out, and then we'd have to light the set 4 different directions, and I had them pull walls out and relight. So you're basically relighting your cone around the table like that. It's kind of a nutty kind of proposition, but we did make it, and they didn't think they could do it. I think we did it in less than 8 hours, the whole scene, but fairly complicated. It's a whole day of shooting, so but it was fun.
Could you speak on how did you get the opportunity to be the cinematographer for Leprechaun in the Hood?
Oh my God.
Because what's interesting about that one, sir, is it's there's already a franchise started. So
yeah.
Coming on to something that's already established, what were
that was a combination. I knew the producers, and I had worked for them on other films, and I knew the director too, so I'd worked with him before. So we're all comfortable with each other, and a lot of the film business is like that. It's like I always tell young people like yourself. I said I don't need a resume because I've never been hired by anyone who wasn't my friend or a friend of a friend, and that's it. That's how it works in Hollywood. Period. So
small world.
Cut out all the other crap. Yeah. It's but that's how it works. It's always somebody, or somebody knows you, or your reputation. That's it. Sending out resumes doesn't really do anything. So yeah.
What was it like being around Ice-T in that film?
Yeah, that film. Okay, that's a feature film that we shot in 12 days. So there's not a lot of chit chat and sitting around on set, grab ass. So you are working insane hours and pushing your crew so hard that it's really hard and brutal to do that kind of stuff. And I believe the production designer actually quit on the last day, and we had no sets. So so the last scene of that we actually made up. I had my electric and grip department staple up some visqueen, and we just backlit it with a lot of lights, everything off the truck, and we did that whole scene where he's rapping at the end and his eyes turn green, and that was all just dark smoke and and magic. It's all smoke and mirrors, man. We just made up a set. We're like, yeah, this will work, and we'll just shoot that scene here. There was no stage. We're like, okay. So you just have to have that attitude, just like nothing stops you. So it was fun. It's a franchise movie, and but Ice-T, whatever. It was there, and actually I just saw him on SVU recently. So but it was a long time ago. So, and that guy does not age. It's amazing.
That was a good. It was a cool franchise. I have to be honest. A
Hmm.
lot of those horror franchises they definitely draw out, and I understand there's money involved and you know, but that
Yeah.
was one of those franchises where they definitely probably made too many of them, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
But it
Yeah,
was
I'm sure.
still watch, you know.
Yeah. I mean, people know that movie. It's kind of funny, but it was all shot at Lacey Street stages in downtown LA, and all the locations were 200 feet from each other. So the apartments is big. I mean, everything was shot all around that neighborhood, and that was it. So that's the only way you can really do that kind of stuff.
Now, how did you? I'm assuming, like you just said, it's probably people you know. How did you get involved into? I'll just group them as like the Nickelodeon productions. How did you get involved in Super
Um,
Ninjas, Big Time Rush, etc.?
Nickelodeon was that was when I thought. Well, I had a friend of mine who was shooting a show called Brothers Garcia, and he asked me to operate a camera for him. So I came in and did that, and that was sort of my intro into it. So um, that was many years ago. Jesus. Try- Jeez. Yes. So yeah, a buddy asked me to do that, and then so I came in, and I think I took over the show for a bit from there. So that was my introduction. My son was really young at the time, and so I thought, children's television, that would be easier hours. And, it was the nice part. It was the commute was right to Hollywood. It was a 10-minute commute for me from where I lived. But as I found out that children's television is really hard to shoot. So there's many hours on set. So it's not the easiest thing to do because you're kind of limited. Your time blocks and limited to actors that how long they can be on a set. So you're sometimes shooting a scene where you're facing the kid and then they have to go off to school, so you have to turn the camera around, shoot an adult who's on the other side of that, or the other kid who's in school. It's great for like the kids who can do that stuff are amazing. So to be able to be consistent and you know be professional and learn this stuff. So
Did
yeah,
you did you ever have any? Do you have any memories from being around Snoop Dogg on the Christmas episode? Anything in particular?
I have a oh from which one? Big Time Rush?
Yeah, Big Time Rush.
Yeah. I actually have a picture of him with me. It's kind of funny. Yes, I do remember that one. Snoop was always an interesting character. So I think I had met him on something else. So, but he's a whole character. He's a handful of human being. So, but very much himself and very nice guy. I mean, super sweet. So
I grew up with Big Time Rush, but
yeah.
before the Super Ninjas, Big Time Rush was great. What was it like working with that crew of people and the music aspect of it too and everything?
Well, oh wow, yeah. That was I got hired by a friend of mine to be camera operator on that one. And that was my first introduction to Scott Fellows, who is an amazing, brilliant person. I had no idea who he was, but my son, who watched Nickelodeon, knew his name, which was absolutely fascinating. That my son was very young and actually read the credits and knew everyone's name. Like, he's like, "Oh, Dad, that's the guy who does Johnny Quest or some other, cartoon." I was like, "Oh, okay. Why do you know that?" I was like, so I went and met him, and whatever, we got along. And he is actually a neighbor in Pasadena. Later on, we found these things out. He's still a great. He's an amazing guy. So really, really talented. So and but doing those shows is not an easy. It's a very physical show. There's physical comedy. And he's very precise at what he wants. So it takes a long time to get everything perfect. He's really good at getting it all perfect, and that's why those shows are so good, so well written, and everything comes together. But those guys and he's really good at picking the talent. So when we did Big Time Rush, I don't think a lot of people know this, that the original Kendall was not the same one on the pilot. So we shot a pilot um, about a year before we actually the show started. So the Nickelodeon didn't whoever Kendall's, I forget his name, but whoever was playing Kendall's part was replaced. Yeah, so those the three older guys who are actually older. So Kendall's actually a little bit younger than the rest of everybody, the other guys, and but they're all amazing, really talented, and really everyone kind of grew into a family on that show. So you know, it's weird how that does. We did so many seasons. I forget how many seasons we did, but it was kind of nice to see them grow up from being like teenagers, and nowadays they're still on stage and they have like 5 kids, and yeah, you're like, what? It's kind of weird to see this whole progression. It's pretty amazing. They're all like super talented guys. I love those guys. So and all the family from that show is all kind of keep in touch. There are certain shows that really you connect with people and you bond, and you know.
That's what I feel like. I'm glad you said that because you could definitely get that energy from watching it back. Like I feel like even if they're acting, you could kind of tell when people don't want to be there.
Hmm.
And that
Oh yeah.
show was the totally opposite of that. It felt like a family, like you said.
Yeah.
You know?
And those guys work so hard. I mean, we would you shooting a show took hours and hours, and we had really long weeks. And then they would go jet off, on the weekend and go do a concert somewhere and then come back. And it's just like, I don't know how you do it, but they're young and had the energy to do that. So, you know, so it's like, wow. They were you could see the amount of energy that they put into those roles, and they still are doing them. So
Something that I definitely want to really get into detail here is on Super Ninjas. And I grew up on that show. That show still inspires me to this day. First season was in California, and the second season was at 31st Street Studios and here in Pittsburgh.
hmm
How did you get? First of all, how did you get involved into being involved with Super Ninjas?
I was actually it shot at Paramount right next door to Big Time Rush, and the producer of that show um, is a good friend of mine, still is. And I was busy shooting that. There was another DP who shot that before me on season one, and um, I would come over and visit my friend, because you're on the lot, so everybody's gonna go grab lunch or whatever. And he would say, "Hey, can you come over and check these sets?" And he did some other stuff like, "Do you really need all these lights?" Because he's a producer, he's trying to save money. Like, so like whatever. So I think I did. I operated a few times when they needed an operator come in if I was on hiatus from Big Time Rush or whatever. And then later when they decided to take it, either they were going to do Atlanta or Pittsburgh, and the producer just asked me to come on and just take over. So, and I said great, and I was like, as long as the great part was the A camera operator Brian lived in Pittsburgh. He had a place in L.A. Burbank, but he has family and everybody. He was from Pittsburgh, so he still is. So, and he was the B camera operator on the first season. So I bumped him up the A camera. He's amazing, amazing. So love Brian. It's great, great guy. Super, knows his stuff. Steady cam. He could do anything. So really talented people. So, and the good part is I got to bring my gaffer, but a lot of the crew were all local. So and he was good. He knew all the local people. And I think when I was coming into town, there were like 6 or 7 shows coming into town at the same time. So crew wise, it's not a big market in Pittsburgh, so you have to get the best. So I had a friend of mine, Corey Garriak. He was the gaffer on Batman. So I asked him who was your rigging gaffer and things like that. He gave me all the names, and Ray Garcia, he's the grip. So they actually told me who they were and gave me their phone number, and so I asked them to ask for me, can you do me a favor and do my show instead of all these other shows? And I was like, it's a 7-month show, I think, at that point. So when we were shooting, so fortunately, got really good A crew come out for that, and that's what made that show a lot easier to do when you have the A crew on board, and you know, uh, so yeah. but that was many months of being away from home. But it was a fun show to shoot. It was kind of great because they let you shoot really dark and it's not shot like a kid show. So a lot of people want bright and stupid lighting and but like a comedy. But this is kind of dark and you can go dark on that show. So I love that. So,
Do you have any
and
good memories filming that show?
um,
Any in particular, to be specific?
uh, I always like working with George Takai. He's pretty amazing and really kind of cool guy. And all the actors on that show, those amazing, those kids. I mean, how they pick them. I mean, they must grow them somewhere from Nickelodeon. Like the talent that comes out of Nickelodeon is amazing. You know, yeah. You wanted to ask me about Bella, Isabella. She is amazing. She's just I work with so many actors and actresses, and from old school 40s Hollywood to, but she was one probably the most talented actors I've ever seen on the set. Just knew her lines, knew how to emotions, can turn on a dime, can pivot. Yeah. All that is just amazing. That's innate. I don't think even that can be trained. So
One thing I'll never forgive Nickelodeon for, sir, is they canceled Super Ninjas on a cliffhanger. That
yeah.
I always have beef. I always have beef with that. You know
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know why they canceled that show, I'll tell you.
that show was, I enjoyed it, but it didn't seem like it was written for. It was a dark show visually and sort of
Mm.
dialogue wise.
Hmm.
When you're on set, and I have a set question as well. I don't want to forget about it. But when you're on
Okay.
set and working with everyone in the writing, are you feeling like, okay, this might be a tough show for the audience that they're making it for?
Um, well, the showrunners were the writers were the showrunners. Those guys, Leo and yeah, remind me of their names.
Garcia,
Sorry.
maybe?
Yeah, Garcia. Thank you. So those guys were great, and they were the showrunners, and they kept everybody in line, and they're super talented. What are they working on now? I know they're working on something. I got a call from them uh, for some other show in New Orleans, but unfortunately, I did not do that. So, but um, yeah, I mean that I kind of liked the show because it was dark, and I kind of have a background of you know when I went to Nickelodeon, that's a little bit brighter and comedy, a little bit different kind of vibe. But when you come from that dark side of like horror movies and things like that, so I kind of like being dark, and that's more kind of fun for me to light. For me, that's kind of be stills my heart and makes me satisfied and see how dark I can get. I mean, I don't know. That was what's appealing to me on that show. So
One of the things was that I always thought about was, how do they do it? They're coming from California to Pennsylvania. The dojo sets and the street sets and everything, how do they transport those across the country?
oh, they built everything. Pittsburgh production designer. I've known the production designer of many different shows. So I think we did Fred together and a couple other things. Everything was just from the ground up.
Okay.
And we had those spaces. The nice part of those stages is they're massive, you know. They have their own climates, there's corners where it's raining over there, it's so big, those spaces. Um, but the nice part is you can kind of spread out and give everybody room to light, things like that. So you can put a light, 40 feet back and, get that kind of stuff. So, and the production designer is great to work with. So we kind of worked together a lot, and he was really good because he'd have 3D sets and all cut out, and I'd be like, okay, and, I'd be like, okay, give me room over here so I can light. I want hot streaks of light coming through, but I want to put the light really far back, and he would accommodate that kind of stuff, and we do, and it was kind of a good collaborative thing because we were there all the time, so we shot a lot, and even on the weekends we were kind of working. Yeah.
Did you have any sort of favorite villain that was in that show that made you? This is like
uh, I haven't seen that show in so long. I mean, um, yeah, I did another series called Black Scorpion many years ago. So that was my first TV series I ever did. So that was a super dark show. So it was not unlike that show. And actually, I had some favorite villains from there. We had Soupy Sales playing a professor something, and then we had the original Batman from the TV series, Adam West. He played God, what was the character? I can't remember, but he was really that was kind of cool to like work with a legend like that. You're like, oh my God, it's Adam West, kind of fun.
how was it working on the high school series? That was I was maybe mid-teens when that came out, so that was sort of more so late for me.
That was more um that was Scott from Big Time Rush. So he asked me to come on and do that show, and it was great. Enjoy working with Scott. I think we only got one season out of that one. So, but working with Bella is amazing. She's so talented, and all the kids on that set are amazing. So, and that was where did we shoot that? Mm, Sunset. We shot that at Sunset Stages in Hollywood. So, yeah, and I had a lot of my crew there. So it's your family there. So you have that when you're working on sets all the time. So.
What was it like working on the Fred show? I do remember that one. I do.
The series was fun. I mean, um, I had no idea who he was. I had asked my son. I'm like, "Who's Fred?" He's like, "Oh, Dad." He said, "Yeah." I'm like, okay. Um, yeah, and that was the producers from that were from Super Ninjas and stuff like that. So we did a few other things together. Um, yeah, no, that was. I'm trying to remember. We shot those on the stages up in Chatsworth somewhere. Not really stages. I remember the stages are super hot in the summertime. That was the other thing I remember. And we also shot another show up there for Amazon. I can't remember. Richie Rich. Richie Rich was another one we shot up there. Same stages actually that Fred was shot on. So,
Okay.
oddly enough. Mm-hmm.
I
So
I like that show. The thing with that was though I'm gonna just be totally honest. I could see how a lot of people could get annoyed at the high pitched voice all the time. But
yeah,
but
yeah.
the movies the movies were definitely um I don't know if wholesome is the word, but they did have like a heart to them, a charm to them. And then
Did they? Yeah.
the series
I
was
never
cool.
saw him. Sorry.
the,
So
the series I like the series. That's why I like a lot of your shots because a lot of the shots that you do, especially going back to Leprechaun in the Hood, a lot of them are intimate shots. And
mhm,
it's like that show, Fred the Show was cool, even though it was limited as well. That
mhm.
one, I enjoyed that one as well, especially that the cow episode. It was lemonade or
Oh, what was that one? Oh God, yeah. I vaguely remember that.
it was like boiled
It
milk.
all becomes a blur after a while.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like, but yeah, the cow episode. Wasn't he like dancing and something? There's some weird scene I remember from that.
it was
He's like breakdancing as a cow. It's kind of strange. But okay. Yeah.
when you jump onto these shows. Is there like a guaranteed shelf life as a be a part of the job? Because obviously these guys are going to get older within about 2-3 years. So how do you present yourself coming onto the jobs every time for these Nickelodeon projects?
Oh, me personally? I got older as I went along. No, oh, you mean the actors and stuff like that?
Yeah,
Well, you just do one season at a time. That's how your contract is. Yeah. You never know when it's going to be cut. I mean, it's television, so it's it's great. You're guaranteed whatever episodes. In the old days was what 22 episodes. That's changed a lot. So television's changed in general. So yeah. How many
is,
episodes things are? There's no guarantees anymore. So kind of a hard business. So don't do it. I don't recommend it.
is television more fast paced working than a film?
Um, wow. It depends on the show, so fast paced. Um, Television, you got to cram a lot of stuff in every week, but feature films too. I mean, there's the pacing on it's just a different way of working. You know, when you're doing a feature film, you're doing a lot of prep with the director beforehand. So a lot of the stuff is, you're kind of interconnected there, and you kind of know what's happening. But when you're doing television, you're the DP and you're the consistent vision behind it. And every week you have a different director coming in. And some shows you can alternate where they have alternating DPs, which is great because you get to prep with the director. But all the shows I've ever done, it was director comes in, you might have a few conversations, while they usually see what you're shooting like the week before, and they're prepping with their crew, their AD crew or whatever. So they'll come and ask questions on the set. So you kind of help them out. And there's a lot of stuff that happens in television where it's like you got to scout a location. You don't have the time during the week to go scout a location. So you're relying on your, best boy, or your gaffers running out to look at it, or rigging gaffers. So there's a lot of people just feeding you information continuously when you're doing television. It's, I think the way to really do it would be have alternating DPs so they can prep with the director. So it also gives you a little bit of rest, and you can kind of really talk things through with the director and get ready. But they just drop in on Monday and it's like, whoa, new face, So a lot of the times, like Nickelodeon, I've already known the director from some other show, so that's really kind of helpful, which makes it a lot nicer. So you already have a shorthand maybe set up before. But a lot of times it's just a new director. You don't know. You don't know how they work. What they're going to come up with a surprise. They'll usually give you a hint of what's coming up, and you're relying on your team to be like, okay, we're probably going to do this, so let's get prepped for this. We're going to be on this location, so I'm going to probably need this, and this. And so there's a lot of other meetings happening underneath. So when you're on set doing television, there's so many decisions being made every day, and not just on what you're lighting at the time. You're, you're thinking about the next week's show, and even maybe 2 weeks from now, or three episodes from now, there may be something huge coming up. So
Do you have any say in the specific camera that you use for just say a general
yeah,
production?
yeah, yeah. But I mean, nowadays cameras are so good. It's really about lenses and things like that. I mean, all the manufacturers make amazing cameras, and you know what you can do with an iPhone is insane nowadays. But that's what I'm just saying. It's like the cameras are so good, and the range and the sensitivity of these cameras are just amazing. What I started with is film, and the fastest film speed was 250 ASA, which nowadays, but your brain kind of lights for, you know, not being able to pick up that much information. You have to add a lot of light, and then you have to train your eye to get, when 500 ASA film came out, that was amazing. I mean, the base camera now for digital is what, 800? That was the lowest speed, and now you can get up to, pretty clean 2500 ASA stuff. And you have to be careful about putting too much light in, and the sensitivity is almost too high. So
I know it's all about creativity and lenses and lighting and things like that. But do you have your personal
sometimes it's
preference?
budget too. You know,
Do you have a
yeah.
personal preference with Red or Sony or Canon? Do you see something great in them all individually?
I mean, I work with pretty much all of them. Actually, yeah, pretty much every camera. So, and a lot of times it's just budget or what you're doing or availability, or you always want the best, but you can't always get that. Can't always get what you want. So feature films, yes, usually you get what you want, but television sometimes, it's a give and take on every single production. So It's a negotiation. It really is. Yeah. Sometimes you'll want really good lenses. I was always a Cook person when I shot features. Those are my favorites. Um, but Panavision lenses are amazing. Arri lenses are amazing. I mean, and nowadays they have so many new lenses out there. It's pretty amazing. And I own stuff. And, try to find cool things and ways to shoot stuff. It's always using still lenses on motion picture cameras and all kinds of ways to shoot stuff. And you just gotta learn. What's your dog's name back there?
Oh, that's my pit bull Damon right there.
Okay, Damon. That's cute. Um, yeah. So it's never like one thing. You can't be like that as a DP. You kind of have to be like, okay, can we afford using Panavision? Yeah. Okay, great. Then we're gonna do that. You're gonna have it also your location. Like not every camera can get everywhere in the world. So.
Is there something that when you were using real film reel that you wish that had some? Was there an advantage using real film than digital way back when, or does digital for you as a cinematographer just blow everything out of the park?
Mm. Um, well, I think there was an attitude change on set when things went digital. So on film, when that camera rolled, it was dead quiet on a set, right? And everyone respected that time. And you can only go 11 minutes on a reel, so he never went past that. Nowadays, you can go endlessly on a camera, and it's brutal on camera operators. You're like, hold that position, for 40 minutes straight. You're like, come on, man. That's just human body's not built for that kind of stuff. But um, it's there's less respect for the camera, I think, digitally, because you could just keep shooting and shooting and shooting, and people and directors, everybody knew it's like when you're shooting film, it's really expensive what you're doing right now. So you kind of respect the film and what it costs and things like that. And nowadays it's like you just have unlimited amount of data, and you're going to kill your editors because you're pouring all this information to your editors, and they have a lot harder time with all that data and stuff like that. And it's just data management now. So I think it's kind of cheapened it digital. I mean, what you can do digitally is amazing nowadays, and the cameras are amazing. So, but it, I don't know. It's definitely a change that you see because I'm old enough to have gotten that transition. So, and the original digital cameras were okay. They weren't that great. So, I always said that film, not only records light, it records emotion better. And I think digital, you kind of lose something. There's something lost there. I can't really put your finger on it, but man, once it goes on film, it picks up different energies, not just light energies. So, and I don't think digital does the same job. But who knows? Maybe digital cameras are getting better and better. But I I just think there's more of a yeah. Okay, I'm not going to worship film, but I do like film and the aesthetic of it. So, but digital nowadays is pretty amazing. So.
Do you have a genre that you filmed that was more flexible to work in or easier to do than say an action or drama or maybe one of those two?
Ooh, uh, well, drama, you have a little more time. So action films are always a lot of there's a lot of cuts and things like that. So you can be a little bit more not as perfect. Everything doesn't have to be exactly perfect because it's only going to be you use 3 frames of this or 3 frames of that or whatever, right? When you're doing a drama, everything has to be pretty much perfect on, you know, aesthetically perfect, and especially if you're doing a single shot or one take kind of deal, everything has to be dead on perfect. So, and there's no cuts. But I don't know. What was your question again? Sorry, I lost track
It,
on that one. So,
it's you basically answered it, but it was the
Hmm.
and you touched on this when we were talking about Super Ninjas, but the darker, the more suspense it could be. And you saying, obviously you had experience with horror films before that. You know,
Hmm.
what makes saying working on a horror film easier or more fun than say a drama or comedy when you're being specifically the cinematographer?
Um, I mean, visually, they're all different ways to work. So sometimes maybe drama is harder to shoot than horror movies, but everything's different. Every single movie is different. Every single director is different. Every single script is different. So there's no general fast rule that you can just go by. So some things are easier, sometimes they're harder. Um, maybe it's the day. I mean, maybe you're on the flow that day and everything comes really easy. And then the next day you may not. So, it goes day to day to everything. So, the actor is whatever. There's always these things that are affecting what's happening in front of the camera.
Have you ever been a part of a set that you couldn't be creative on? And if so, how did you navigate that to still finish the project?
Uh, well, I don't. Hmm, that's a hard question. There are definitely sets that you're not as creative because you have to do it so fast, maybe. But maybe that makes you more creative. So I think every set's different. It's like you, you tell me your experience. So.
Like working as a team, it's me and my close buddies and friends of friends, and we
Hmm.
have uh some of the film school students in our local area a part of what we do. And
Hmm.
this hasn't happened recently, but some of these guys at the time didn't know how to work as a team. And
Yeah.
you got to work as a team to do these things. And it's the best idea wins instead of one person. It's either this or we're done kind of thing. And I understand that.
Yeah. Oh,
So
you think there is democracy on a set? No, that doesn't exist.
yes, exactly,
No,
exactly,
it
exactly,
doesn't. It works like a military organization. So there's a top-down command. So
exactly.
that's the only way it works. So
Yes.
it's the only way. I mean, that's been doing it for over 100 years. That system. So,
Yeah. Because that
yeah.
that's what the thing was is like you gotta work as a team, but still you have to have direction. You have to have an end goal.
You can give a certain amount of freedom to your keys, and that's super important because then they're going to feel restricted. So
Correct.
you have to say, all right, this is generally, like a rigging gaffer, you'd be like, okay, I haven't seen the location, you tell me, I need a backlight coming in from here, you tell me where I'm going to put that thing. And you let people you know be creative on their own too. So that's part of the process of leadership. And there's a lot of DP work when you get up to those, and yet the crews are so big. It's just a lot of management, a lot of people management. So, and you got to let people be creative. So, I mean, there are shoots where you just feel like it's just too much management. So, yeah, but that's maybe more television. So, feature films, you definitely feel like you're involved. You're so creatively involved. But on television, you already create the space visually. You know, you have that Bible, and usually it's all done in prep. And you're like, okay, this is my Bible. This is how it's going to be done. Everyone reads the Bible. They know what the hell's going on. This show is a very dark show. Blah blah blah. This is the feel of the show, and you work together with costume people and production designers and art directors, and that everybody works together and kind of comes up with that collaboration. How everything's set. Mhm.
To apply that to what you just said, do when you were working on Nickelodeon shows, was there any sort of even though they were for, teens and older, was there any sort of some sort of team of people watching you guys to keep it um
Always a showrunner. The
yeah.
showrunner really is the penultimate answer to everything. So,
The last things I wanted to ask you, which I think is very interesting, is even though everything is mainly digital now, when was the last time you had an opportunity to film with using real film?
Wow. Oh, good question. I think last film thing was probably, oh God, I can't remember. I'd have to look at my resume. It would be maybe Greetings from the Shore, or a movie I shot in New Jersey, or Reeker, the second Reeker. I think that might have been the last film thing I've been.
Do you see that
Or
coming
no,
back as the main
yeah.
usage, or do you think digital was basically the main export for the foreseeable future?
Oh, digital. Yeah. It's a economic thing.
Yeah,
It makes no sense. I mean, unless you have the kind of money, the Christopher Nolan kind of money, where you can actually shoot film, things like that. So, but it's expensive. I mean, and there's not that many labs left, so, too, as well. So it, it's definitely a economic decision, and you have to really back it up with, this is going to make X amount of dollars before we invest that much. Digital's just less expensive, so. And it's show business, not show art. Just remember that.
that's true.
So
That is true.
yeah. Hmm.
The one very specific thing that basically the last thing I wanted to ask you today was, and we kind of touched this on before, but
Hmm.
using all the types of Panavision, Canon, Red, etc. I understand each of them have their own unique look to them, lenses, different tech aspects of it. But is there one that you could say, you know what, I use this one and this one had this advantage over these other ones that I really liked better than all the other ones?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, there's cameras I use for low light sensitivity that's better than others, but mostly almost all the cameras nowadays are pretty much identical, and they can almost all do the same thing. I, you know, the technology has come so far nowadays. So I, there's no, special camera out there that can do uh, one thing better than the other. I mean, you're always going to use photosonics for, high speed photography and things like that, but most cameras can do everything now. So
Did you ever have your hands on a Sony Cine Alta back in the day?
yeah, yeah, I've shot with those. Yeah.
Would you say those were very flexible, or because I remember one of them, like you just said, I think it was it escapes me, but it was just like how you said, how it could adjust to low light and higher light real quick, and that was a cool aspect I
Well,
like.
that's just changing the ASA and things like that. But I mean, yeah, I've shot airy stuff, and I've shot all kinds of, there are like standard cameras that everyone uses. Aries, of course, are reliable, and Panavision, things like that. So sometimes I'll like to try something new just because it's different. But I've used Black Magic, and I've matched those with Aries, and it's so it's so much easier to match everything nowadays. So, I've done, shot stuff with, airy cameras, and then I've had my little pocket cinema cameras where no camera could fit before. And I just wanted that angle, it might be a real location and you're stuck in a space, and a camera, you can get it to actually match what the area looks like. So there's all kinds of ways to get things to match and stuff. It's so good nowadays. It's so much easier for you guys.
My last question definitely is that you always hear, like, when they release a product, they already have the next one lined up for the next year. You know, just generally speaking, you got this new computer. Well, they already made the new one. That's the one when you buy it, they've already made the next one. When you're working on these cameras, how
Hmm.
generally speaking, how close when they use a new camera for a production, does major productions already have access to what's unreleased still, or is it sort of
Somewhat, yeah. You definitely have more access to what's in the pipeline, and there are companies that will work with you to, you know, bring something to market, or yeah, Panavision does that with lenses and things like that. You can talk, and you need something that whatever doesn't looks like the 1970s, or it's like there's all these things you can come up with, and their manufacturers are happy to work with you on trying to build those things, so because they're looking for inspiration as well.
Mr. Mickens, I appreciate your time, sir, and I appreciate the time with everything, sir.
Keep on trucking, man, and keep in touch.